Hello, Movie Crusaders, and welcome to a special episode. My name is Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And today we're doing a non-spoiler / spoiler discussion of one of the most anticipated films of the year. Definitely one of the more anticipated films of the summer. And that is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I believe this was I think it was my number 2 most anticipated for the year and most anticipated for the summer, because the number 1 was Guardians Volume 3. So they kind of stayed locked in. This was one of your more anticipated too, right?
It was like top 3, yeah.
Yeah. So we both have been super excited for it. Now, for me, we love backtracking to previous films when we do this. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I remember when they first announced that movie, that was kind of like, I think, what was it? Homecoming had happened, but not Far From Home. And I remember them when they announced it, I was like, oh my God, why are you doing a freaking Spider-Man?
The thing is, it was just coming off of the previous Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, where Sony got ahead of themselves and had these whole plans for Sinister Six films, and they were going to do all these different things, and they had said, well, the only thing we own from Marvel is Spider-Man, so we're going to just make this giant universe of it, and they got ahead of themselves, and then you saw what happened to that. That just went nowhere. And so when you had a couple, at least one, like you said, I'm not sure where it was.
I'm pretty sure, because I remember at the end of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, it was a teaser for Venom. Because that was the post-credit scene, was a tease for Venom, showing that they were like in the same universe, because it said, meanwhile at Earth, blah, 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 Venom. So I think Homecoming was already out at that point.
Yeah, so at least one of the MCU Spider-Mans was out.
Yeah.
And at that point, we're like, oh, wow, they made a good Spider-Man movie. This is great. We're going to be back on track with Spider-Man. And then Sony says, oh, now we're going to make this cartoon Spider-Man 2. And we're just like, did you learn nothing from last time?
We were just like, and it's like, oh, but it's Miles Morales. I was like, okay, I know who Miles Morales is, but wasn't like aware.
I don't know anything about it. It's like, I don't know if you need an animated one at the same time as a live action. I think a lot of your mainstream people that not the comic book followers are not going to understand that they're two different Spider-Mans, and it's just it became a whole thing. So I went into it was like,
But not just us, everyone were blown away by Into the Spider-Verse. I mean,
absolutely.
The animation, the story, the acting for everything, just literally every facet of that film.
Yeah, because the first trailer came out for it, and I'm like, you know what? This animation style is kind of unique. I kind of like that. It's something different. It's not just the same old animation we get and everything. It's like, but still, I was at the time like, we don't need another Spider-Man movie. It's like, and the story, whatever. I don't care about Miles Morales, but at least the animation looks cool, so I'll check it out. But like you, I went into it and I came out of there like, holy shit, that was awesome.
Well, yeah, because like to me, the hook for it, what the first trailer was, Nicolas Cage is a Spider-Man, John Mulaney is Porker, like was it Spidey?
Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Man.
I was like, okay, I'm intrigued by this. This is either going to be a train wreck or what, you know. And then by the end of it, you're like, holy shit, this is brilliant. Like animation wise, it's insane. Didn't Sony, like, it was like a brand new animation style they were doing. Like after that, like everyone wanted to do this kind of animation style. And because I remember when it was one of my very, very first reviews on my channel, and I was like, I'm so like, this movie is so fantastic, but I'm afraid that people are not going to give this a chance because of how Sony has kind of ruined Spider-Man, and MCU is kind of taking the lead, that they're just going to go, oh, that's this animated Spider-Man film, no one cares about it. Luckily, word of mouth and everything brought it up, and then it actually won the Oscar for Best Animated Film, which I don't think any of us was like...
And deservedly so.
It absolutely deservedly so. And it was one of those things where it was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be nominated. It was like, oh, I hope it wins, but it's not going to. And then it did. You're like, oh, shit. Hell yeah. So you had this build and build and build for this sequel. And I will admit, Brian was worried about the sequel from the first trailer, because you thought it was... Didn't you say it was too busy? It
was quite chaotic.
Yeah.
Well, because it's once again, I was a little worried because they announced at some point, like, hey, we're going to do Across Spider-Verse Part 1 and Across Spider-Verse Part 2. I'm like, oh, now you're already making it 2 films. Now you're doing like a Hunger Games, Hobbit, Harry Potter thing.
Yeah.
And like, oh, can't you just make one movie? And then of course they later changed the title of the second one to Beyond, but it's still a 2-part story, obviously. But yeah, I saw the trailer and I'm like, I still love the animation and stuff, but just it looks just so chaotic. And on top of coming off of, I'm still not sold on the whole multiverse thing. I'm kind of sick of. And it's like, the thing is, this movie, I'm getting ahead of myself, but this movie, I think it works. But when you have this movie and you have the MCU doing it with Doctor Strange and all that stuff, and you have DC also doing it now with the Flash and all that stuff, it's like, can we just back off the multiverse thing?
It's gonna probably be like another 4 years of until we get through this multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
But when it's utilized correctly, it's acknowledged. And like I said, this is the non-spoiler part of the review. So for people who don't know what the plot of Across the Spider-Verse is, it's a year and 4 months, I think is what Miles says in the movie. It's a year and 4 months since the events of the first film. He's gone through a growth spurt. He's kind of come into his own of Spider-Man. His powers have gotten stronger. He's feeling comfortable in his own skin of being Spider-Man. But much like Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2 and Tom Holland Spider-Man, school, his life, his family, everything's kind of, he's neglecting certain things because of being Spider-Man. So you have this dynamic with what's he want to do? Like he's like, the whole main plot of the beginning part of the story is what does he want to be? Which granted, he wants to be Spider-Man, but for everybody else who doesn't know he's Spider-Man, what do you want to be, Miles? What do you want to do? Like, what makes you special outside of being fucking Spider-Man? But he's got this dynamic with his family, with his parents, because they don't know, and they want him to, much like most parents would, assert yourself, show us that you are serious, show us that you're growing up by being responsible and not just missing, like every Spider-Man does. Like, you're never around. Where are you? Oh, it's because I'm saving the freaking plant, city. But to them, you're just absent-minded all the way. We get introduced to a new character named Spot, who's in the trailer, which we'll touch on him in the spoiler review. But the main crux is that Gwen shows up and brings Miles into the, how do we want to call it? Spidey world? Spider world?
Spider-Verse.
The Spider-Verse. Well, but they call it something different, but which is a great little moment in the movie. But basically, that there is a whole time. Well, no, it's all in is it Nueva York? How they call it?
Yeah, it's Nueva York, and there's a year on it, or an Earth number 289 or something.
99 is who we saw at the end of Into the Spider-Verse, played by Oscar Isaac. And he's basically corralled all the Spider-Man there. And they're basically trying to fix everything that happened in the events of the first film with the Collider, and they even dropped Doctor Strange and Tom Holland Spider-Man, where they messed up stuff there. And so basically Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, is trying to enlist all the Spider-Men to try and almost kind of like the is it the TVA in Loki? What are they called? The Time Bureau, where they're trying to fix issues in timelines and make sure everything is fixed, and so they don't cause anomalies and all this kind of crap. So very much like Loki in a way. But in the process of that, and like I said, this is all in the trailer, Miles sees the death of his dad. And Miguel's like, that's going to happen. You can't change that. You can't fix it. And Miles thinks, I'm Spider-Man. I can save him and save everybody. I'm going to do that. And so it caused a conflict between Miguel and Miles and all the other spiders. And that's the main general plot of Across the Spider-Verse is this. But as messy as the trailer looked, that's mostly just one big action sequence in the film. Would you agree?
That's the main one. There's a lot of chaos in this movie.
There is, but the chaos that we see in the trailer is a whole bunch of Spideys chasing.
That's essentially about a 20-minute segment. Yeah.
That's a 20-minute sequence in this 2-hour and 20-minute film. There's a whole lot of other story in this, and I guess I'll go to you real quick on your general non-spoiler thoughts of Across the Spider-Verse. I honestly don't know what Brian thinks about this movie. He's seen it twice now. I've only seen it the one time. So Brian, take it away.
So yeah, I want, this is one I'm glad that we waited till today to shoot, because I needed to see this movie a second time, just to kind of fully form my thoughts. Because the first time I saw it, Even the beginning of the movie, throughout the whole movie, I'm like, there's is such a thing as too chaotic, and there's such a thing as getting too over stylized with your animation. And I thought that there were some times in this movie where they kind of overstepped both of those bounds here and there. It's just getting to be a little much. Um, and I had like other nitpicks throughout the movie, just little things mostly. Um, but so I came out of it loving the movie. I really did enjoy this movie quite a bit. Let me just say that right up front. But there was things about it. I'm like, it's still it is. I liked it a lot. I really loved it, but it's not as good as I want it to be, or not. I won't say that. Not as good as, not like a 5-star movie or anything. But I'm like, you know what? I want to see it a second time now that I've kind of seen it once. Now I can fully digest everything and also just catch stuff, because like there's so much stuff coming at you.
There Easter eggs galore in this.
Yeah,
movie.
and on second viewing, while I still have some nitpicks here and there, my score on it has gone up. The animation is, of course, it's as stunning and beautiful as the first movie. Like I said, they do, they go into different styles, things like that, and sometimes it's almost like pencil sketch animation as opposed to like fully 3D, CG animation. And it sometimes the variations get a little much. I didn't love like there's like almost a watercolor feel to like Gwen's world.
Yeah,
I didn't love the way that looked, but I didn't like hate it. Didn't like take me out of the movie or anything. So, but and then plot wise, which we'll get into later, there's a few nitpicks here and there. But honestly, I think it's awesome. I think that the action is great. I think that the animation is spectacular. The story is, it's got all the humor you want, all the emotion you want, all the action you want to it. I will say, and this is no secret because it's part 1 of 2 essentially, I'm getting a little tired of cliffhanger endings. I'm like, and this is like, it ends and it's like,
here, let me ask you this. Would it have bothered you as much if Fast X didn't just
probably not, honestly, because there have been Avengers Infinity War, Empire Strikes Back, these things happen. But when like basically essentially the last 2 big movies I've seen back to back, being Fast X and this, are both like to be continued, and I'm just like, can I watch a full movie? Just all I want. And it's like, and I understand you want to leave, strings going, leave things for the sequel and ongoing story, but you can still have a fulfilling single film to watch as well. But I mean, like I said, that's something that upon second viewing, knowing that the way it was going to end, that I was just like, okay, I'm prepared for this. I'm okay. As that bothered me less. And yes, the fact that I just saw Fast X had an influence on the first time I saw it, that feeling of it. It was like, oh, another one of these. But yeah, overall, I love this movie.
Yeah, I like I said, no question, the animation is gorgeous. I love that each world was a different color palette, was a different kind of artistic view. Not every world was the same, which it's one of those things where it's like when you go back to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, when they went to different worlds, some of them were cool looking, and other times it was like, okay, it's the
they went too far into silly.
Well, no, when I'm talking about like yes, you have like the paint one, and then you had like the world where you had dark Doctor Strange, where it was just like a house and the world was all like green. But then you had like the one world where like with like what's that?
At least they didn't have hot dog fingers, so I was happy with that.
True. Which I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once, so that worked for me. But even with Everything Everywhere All at Once, each variation, it was still felt like the same world, just a different attire kind of thing. And with Doctor Strange, like the one planet they probably spent the most time on, it was like, oh, it looks kind of like the same, but just a little different of a color tint, or green is different, and oh, there's pizza balls. Like it's just like it just feels like they went down a different street, but they're still in New York kind of thing. With Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, like you said, with Gwen's world, it's a color, like a wet, or what was it? I'm blanking on the word. It's late.
I said watercolors. How I
watercolors, yeah, because like you had this like sweeping kind of color palette plate, and then when you're in,
and actually, and towards the end of the film, when they went back to that, there actually you could see like it was like water running on it. Yeah,
exactly. It's almost like it's literally melting around it, and it's a unique, different approach. And then when they're at Nueva York, it's a different color palette. When they're in is it Mumbai? Mumbai, it's a different way. Like each world is unique and colorful in their own way. Each Spider-Man is drawn differently. There's some that look hand drawn. There's some that look CGI. There are some that are live action. We will definitely hit on that in the spoiler review. There's it was so unique that like you could literally be watching a movie and you've got Miles in his own color palette. You have a Spider-Man over here that's hand-drawn. You got another Spider-Man that's over here that's live action. You got another Spider-Man over here that's video game colored. You have another one over here who's like 1960s drawing. You have one over here that's like 1990s MTV animation. It's freaking amazing how like meticulous and like just perfected this is. And
it was like a modern version of like Toontown and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah, whereas I mean obviously technology and things have made it even better since then, but I just meant in terms of like you'd have like Betty Boop, the black and white one here, and then you have like the Disney style animation, the 2D and the 3D and things like that. It's the same kind of thing here, but obviously like turned to 100.
And the ability that they're all standing there, but they're all interacting and fighting or swinging and all this, and it all flows beautifully. It doesn't feel like when you're watching like a live action film and you're like, well, that's CG, that kind of looked fake. And it's like, no, in this, as weird as everything looks, it all felt real. It all felt like this stuff could be like that. And it didn't feel like, what's the word? What's the word when someone looks off and you can't, and you can just see it's off?
Off kilter, out of place. I don't know what you're looking for.
No, I'm blanking on the tip. Guys, it's super late. We're shooting this, so my brain's kind of, and I just got off like an 8-hour shift. Like in Rogue One when they did Leia, and it was like, you look off. It's a time frame.
Oh, you're talking about the Uncanny Valley?
Uncanny Valley, thank you. My brain just couldn't pull it together. Okay. But it doesn't feel like Uncanny Valley when you're watching this. It's a smooth line stream. The story is beautiful. I went back and rewatched Into the Spider-Verse right before I saw this, and I just love how personal that story is. And that's something that Spider-Man has always been incredibly great at, is the personal story of Spider-Man with his friends, her family, even the villains. That's why Spider-Man is probably my second favorite hero outside of Wolverine. Is I love that you can have all these fun action sequences and swinging around, but the personal stories of everything are great. And I love the personal story of the characters in the first film, and it continues through here. There's some fantastic story elements between him and his parents, especially his mom. Gwen is more pushed into the lead character role this time around with Miles, and she's got a great character story as well. Each character has something, and the stories are personal and they hit really well. The voice acting is top notch all the way through. The action is fun and exciting. Like Brian said, it's incredibly funny in certain ways. The cameos and the Easter eggs are great. Hands down, one of my favorite cameos ever. And I'm like, let's put it this way. This is definitely going to be a nominee at the end of the year for our Movie Crusader Awards, maybe even win. Because when this person popped on screen, I was like, and I got so excited. So did like 90% of the people in the crowd that knew what the hell was going on. Across the Spider-Verse, I didn't, and I knew, like what you said, Brian, you with the Fast X and everything with it going to cliffhangers, I knew this was going to end in cliffhangers, and I knew exactly where I was like, I know where I'm at.
I knew everything wouldn't be resolved. I didn't realize how much of a like cliffhanger it was going to be.
Well, see, like I said, I knew where we were at runtime wise for my brain.
As you were approaching, I knew. Yeah,
I was like, all right, I know how where this is going to end. Yeah. But there's a twist at the end of this movie that made me go, oh shit! And I was not prepared for that, and it made me go, brah, fucking I am so proud of this movie for what it's doing. And I knew it was like, you know what? Like with Fast X, I was not happy with the cliffhangers because they were cheap and they were lame, and it did not make me go, I can't wait to see Fast 11 or Fast X Part 2, whatever the fuck you're going to call that. It did not make me excited to see those movies. It just made me annoyed. Cross the Spider-Verse cliffhanger endings made me go, oh, why did you end? I wanted to watch you continue. Luckily, March. We don't have to wait a year. It is
currently, Sony more than anyone likes to push dates. So.
It's currently scheduled for March, so we may only have to wait 9 months.
I would not doubt that the apparent so far success of this movie makes them push it to summer again. But I believe 100% it'll come out next year.
Yeah, it's definitely coming out next year. Again. Yeah, it's definitely coming out next year. But Across the Spider-Verse, in my opinion, succeeds in everything that Into the Spider-Verse did and built on it. The effects that happen into the Spider-Verse, the repercussions that happen in the first film are built upon in the sequel. Things that happen in the first film that you would think like, oh, it's a one-off, that's not gonna come back. It comes back around. The characters are better. The action is better. The story is, I wouldn't say it's better, but it's built on, and it's advanced in terms of the story. I think it excels at doing everything that a sequel needs to do and should do to elevate the story overall. That when we do get to this end point where we got the cliffhangers, it's earned and it makes you like excited, like Infinity War did at the end of Avengers leading into Endgame. You were dying to see more. Whereas with Facts X, you're just like, oh, F you for doing that. I loved this movie. It is my favorite movie of the year, hands down. I did not think something was going to take Guardians out this quickly, but it did. This is hands down my number one movie of the year. It's going to be very, very hard for a movie's going to have to come out this year that's going to have to just completely blow me away to knock this off the mountain. My overall score is a 97%. And it could go higher on a rewatch, but just watching everything that's going through with this film, I was so happy and so impressed and could not be any more excited for Beyond to come out. And I can't wait to talk about the spoilers because there's so much that I want to talk about. I'm just like, I'm trying to not to go too far. You said the score went up for you on rewatch. Where are you at on your score?
I am at a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay. So you still like Into better than this?
Well, and Into I just gave the bump like last week.
I know you did, but you gave it 5 stars. You giving this one 4.5.
This one I think very well could make that bump 5 stars, but because this is clearly half a story, I think I have to see how they stick the landing.
And I still think that even if the landing doesn't stick, and
they will. Let's be honest.
Because let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. Empire Strikes Back is considered by most the best Star Wars film ever made. Return of the Jedi didn't really stick the landing. It was fine. Right. It didn't blow it away. Did that tarnish Empire Strikes Back? No.
I will say I am almost certain that this will get bumped to 5 stars. I rarely give the things 5 stars on my first viewing. It's like they have to simmer on it and bump it. Yeah.
I'm kind of in terms of a trilogy, I'm kind of a slut for the middle. Two Towers is my favorite Lord of the Rings film. I love the second two. I think Two Towers is the best Lord of the Rings movie out of the three. A lot of people think Return of the King is. I think Two Towers is the best one. But that's also because it's got the most Smeagol in it, and Helm's Deep is the best shot action sequence in the entire trilogy. I think Across the Spider-Verse, even with the cliffhanger endings, I think is hands down. I don't know if I want to give it more than No Way Home, but it's right there. Maybe even will be the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. Once Beyond comes out, if it sticks to language, I have 1,000% confidence in Lord and Miller. And they did change the directors this time around. So I don't know if these guys are going to be doing the third one or not, or if they're going to do someone different.
The fact that it was a part 1 and part 2 tells me they were probably working on them simultaneously, essentially. So yeah.
I mean, I'm not a big shout out for directors, and not that they don't deserve it, but Joaquin Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson with Lord and Miller. Bravo to all of you, because to have a movie this chaotic, like Brian said, and to not have it be a jumbled mess, but to have it actually flow incredibly well, it's amazing. And an animated film of this magnitude to stick the landing like they did, I'm blown away. I'm so happy that this movie exceeded every expectation that I had and has built on it. And I would be hard pressed to say that when we come around to next year and we do the most anticipated for 2024, that this is not number 1 going into, or Beyond won't be my number 1 most anticipated, because I cannot wait to see how this story ends. So like I said, 97% overall score, my highest score of the year so far. Brian, a 4.5, potentially could bump up to a 5. So if you guys enjoyed this non-spoiler review, hit that like, share, subscribe button. Let us know what you guys think of the film. But now we're going to go spoil some shit. So here is your warning.
One quick note I wanted to add, because I was just looking up who these directors are, because they essentially have like almost no credits. Like Joaquin Dos Santos has done like a lot of the straight to video stuff for like DC, things like that. But he also apparently did a lot of directing work on Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, which I know a lot of people really love. They love animation. But the one that jumped out at me is Kemp Powers, who apparently is an American screenwriter and playwright, best known for his work on the play that you like and the movie of One Night in Miami. So there you go.
Good. That's probably where a lot of the heart of the story came in.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, so now we're going into our spoiler discussion. If you have not seen Across the Spider-Verse, leave now, come back, listen to what we thought about it afterwards. Unless you guys just want us to, want to be spoiled, which why? Why are you these kinds of people? If you have not seen this, don't listen to this part right now because you're messed up in the head. Go watch the movie and come back and talk to us about it. So, spoiler warning, here it is. 3, 2, 1. Let's go into it. The twist ending with when he finds out that he's in the wrong, because it took me longer than I wanted to admit that I didn't realize, because when he tells his mom, I'm Spider-Man, she goes, who? And I'm like, what do you mean who? Like, you fucking know who Spider-Man is. Like, you literally watched him, watched the news report of him dying in the first film. It's like, she knows who he is. And then I was like, oh.
Well, the thing that gets me is that it wasn't even that hidden, because upon rewatch, so I've had the advantage of a second watch of it.
Yeah.
It's there's so many times they talk about, they said multiple times, oh, the spider that bit you wasn't from your dimension. And then when he's going back, they show the screen where it says he's going to the 42, like Earth 42 or whatever. Yeah. And you're like, duh, I should have known he's not going back to the right one.
Well, and his mom immediately went oh, you changed your hair. And I was like, is it because he was wearing the mask? I was like, why is his hair different?
Well, yeah, just did it is he goes back there, and I think the way it's, even it being animation, not live action, the way it's directed and edited works so well, because until that moment where we realize essentially he's not in his world, you think that Gwen is watching him, she is in the same world as him, and then you realize, oh wait, they're in completely different places. Yeah, she's out the window, because at first when she went in the room, I was like, did she go to his dorm room? I'm like, no, that's not his dorm room, because Genki would be there. If you look at the shape of it and stuff on the walls, it's it's the same room. Because I was just like, I was trying to be it, and then finally I was like, oh shit, And so, but then you get to the point where it's there's Uncle Aaron, and he's like, hey, let's go. We gotta go do. I'm like, oh shit, he's bad. Miles is bad in this world, and that because my brain forgot that because the spider went to the wrong universe, that there is no Spider-Man in this world. And so when Prowler shows up, and I was like, oh shit, that's gonna be Miles. And just look at the way Miles looks, he just looks different. Like you said right before we shot this, different voice actor for that Miles, which I thought was weird. I figured it surprises me, unless it's misinformation on the website, but yeah. I mean, but I'm fine with that. But I love that aspect. And then of course we all know what's gonna happen, because it's a callback to the first film. You tied him to a punching bag. He learned from Peter B. Parker. You're not watching the hands. It's like I see him charging his finger. He's charging his finger up on the thing. But I love that that's where we end. And then of course we get that moment where with Gwen, she brings in our cavalry from the first film. Because the whole time I was like, because the whole time I was like, where the fuck is Spider Noir? Where is Porky? Where is oh God, was it Penny Parker? Penny. Yeah, I was like, where are they at? Why aren't they in the Spider World with everybody? But then when they all showed up at the end, I was like, well, Penny had shown up once earlier too. She did actually show up. It was when everyone was kind of, but Noir wasn't Nicolas Cage was there, probably because he wasn't available to shoot some voice work. And John Mulaney, I even said this before this came out, I was like, Mulaney was in rehab, so he probably just wasn't available to pop up for the voice casting. But when they popped up at the end and she had this new Spider-Man group, I was like, yes, yes. And what sucks is that people in the theater got mad when it ended that way. And I'm just like, don't get mad. Get mad because, oh, it ended. Don't get mad. That was bullshit ending. Well, the only comfort I take is in knowing that, because I heard people grumbling about it too. And even I kind of went, ugh. But I think the people grumbling, was followed up by what I could overhear in conversations. It wasn't oh, fuck you for not having an ending. It was, shit, I need to see what happens next,
honestly, I think most of the grumbling on top of that also was that this is probably the first Marvel MCU movie in forever that didn't have any post or mid-credit scenes at all.
Yeah.
Because like everyone waited. I waited. Because it was one of those things where it was like, after they said Miles will be back in Beyond Spider-Man, I'm like, the only thing I could think of that they could add into this right now would be a comedy thing. Because it's like, you're not going to add any new story.
I think they just want to leave you with that ending. And
I was like, if anything, it's going to be a comedy angle, maybe with like Mayday or something. But and then it ended. I was like, you know what? That's fine, because where this story ended, you didn't need to add anything else to it. So I actually wasn't upset about that. But there were people in my theater who was like, really? And I was like, calm the fuck down, people. Like, this movie was fucking amazing. Like, just because you didn't get a cheap joke at the end, they don't fucking need it. Spider-Verse doesn't need
that. I didn't even wait because I knew there wasn't a post credit, so I left after it said that Beyond will return.
Normally I look it up and I didn't, but like the theater was so packed where I was like, it would have been a hard time for me just to even get out of the theater. So I was like, I'll just sit here and wait. But Spot. I didn't know it was Jason Schwartzman, but like as I was watching, I was like, this sounds like Jason Schwartzman.
It just took me about 30 seconds because at first I'm like, I know that voice. Why do I know that voice?
Well, it's like, as I said, I was like, I know this voice. I was like, it sounds like Jason Schwartzman, but I'm not sure if it is. But then at the end, I was like, of course it was. But
it only took about 30 seconds before I was like, oh, it's definitely Jason Schwartzman.
I loved that character. I love the way they animated him. I love the fight sequences, like how everything went through. Like there's so much variety in that character in terms of the fighting styles and everything. And a lot of people were like, oh, the way they try to connect him to Miles. Like, no, I love that he's the bagel dude.
The bagel dude.
Because that was always one of the funniest parts of the movie. I always look back and say, doink,
it actually says bagel. Yeah.
Bagel. And I was like, I always remembered the bagel guy. And I love that is him. And I love that, like, he basically was like this joke of a villain to start the film. But it builds and it builds and it builds. And he finally finds his power set. And then he becomes OP powerful. To where it's like, this guy that you were joking and laughing about, Miles, this guy is now probably the most powerful villain out there. And a lot of it is because of how you basically Spider-Man'd him. You poked at him and you poked and made fun of him. And you made him this incredibly powerful being now. And I love the progression of like, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's joking. He's kind of like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm not robbing you. I'm robbing the banks. They're the bad guys, not you. To, I'm a god now. And and we've seen that progression before with like Jamie Foxx and Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it didn't work that well there. But in this one, I'm loving how the progression of Spot is, and I'm intrigued to see in Beyond, is Prowler Miles going to team up with him? Who knows? Because that could happen. Spot could use this other Miles to try to stop his Miles.
Well, as long as we're on this subject, let me go into basic predictions, because I think that the impression I got, I don't know if this is what's trying to convey or just where my mind went, is that basically he said, oh, your dad's alive in your dimension. It's like they want to go kind of like Miguel said he did when he took the place of the other Spider-Man.
Yeah, he wants to.
I think he wants to go there where his dad can be alive, where his uncle's brother can be alive again. So I think that's.
I 1,000% think that's what's going to happen, which is why I think that he will team up with Spot in order to try to take on Miles and keep and take everything from us. Because that's another thing. I'm going to take everything from you. Well, what better way to take him from you than to have this other version of you take it, and then he can, because he's a bad guy too. We'll team up. We'll take everything from Miles, and he doesn't have to kill anybody. Like, he doesn't have to kill Miles' family, because this other Miles is just going to take his place. I like that. I like that thought process. I like that mindset. What did you think of the beginning of the film, basically giving us the complete mythology of Gwen?
I love it. Gwen is my favorite character in these whole movies. If they made a movie with Gwen, I'd be happy. And not just because I have Gwenverse right here, not just because I have a Gwen figure over my shoulder. And it's also my daughter is named Gwen.
It's not because we fucking love Haley Steinfeld as well.
I love Haley Steinfeld.
Yes.
But yeah, and by the way, I didn't name my daughter after this. It just happens to be the same name.
Sure.
But I loved the opening. I loved how they're setting the whole thing to her like going off on the drums.
Mhm.
It just kind of had that feeling to it, that percussion as she's telling the story, and it's almost like I don't know, almost like a beat poetry feel to it. She's just slamming the drums as she's going in. It's kind of progressing, and it tells her whole story. And I didn't realize
because we got snippets of it in the first film, but it was like that comic book like da 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 da. And I love that they did. They slowed it down because what, they had the time.
Yeah,
to do it.
You got to see her world. You got to meet her dad. Was that Shea Wiggum? Shea Wiggum?
Yeah, Shea Wiggum.
I was like, wait, Captain Wiggum?
Yeah, I was like, every time I read that, I immediately think of Simpsons. So you're on the same mindset that I'm in.
Yeah. So if he had gotten the promotion, would he be Captain Wiggum then? Anyway.
No, it's Chief Wiggum in The Simpsons.
Chief Wiggum. That's what I meant to say.
Chief Wiggum.
Damn it! Ruined my joke. Thanks a lot. No, but I love we got to see her world. Like I said, I didn't love the kind of watercolory aspect. I didn't hate it.
It was one of those things where I had to adjust to it and get used to it. But then, like, once I did, I was like, you know what? I like that her world is completely different.
Oh, I did like that. Yes.
So it's for someone who doesn't know Spider-Verse and who, because I had this guy I used to work with. He was there with his son, and he had never saw the first film. So like he was sitting next to me. He's like, none of this makes sense. Like, well, it's because you didn't.
Yeah, from shot to shot, like her hair and skin is changing colors and things like that.
Yeah, you didn't watch the first movie, man. Like, you really should have watched the first fucking film. But I love that.
You might be in trouble, but yeah.
Well, yeah, because like, and then we, I don't want to jump away from Gwen yet because her character's so great. But like when you get Spider-Punk, and he's just this like hand drawn Spider-Man character, and it's like, it's all that was just like comic book off the page right on the screen. And so it's like, I love that each dynamic was drawn their own way, but it didn't, and how they were able to bleed into each other's worlds, but not overtake the narrative of what world they were in.
I will say, well, this is still part of the Gwen sequence. Yeah. Because first of all, the whole drum sequence at the beginning, I love that whole where they kind of telling her backstory, and then where she ends up like quitting her band and things like that. I like that. But then when we're still in the Gwen sequence, when we first see the Vulture that's there,
the Renaissance Vulture,
who's I was like, I wasn't quite sure, like you're talking about, it's like a different animation style, but it's in there but not taking over. It took me a minute to adjust to that, and that's kind of at the point where I was like, okay, this is what this movie's going to be. It's going to be all kinds mashed together.
I loved that whole action set piece.
Oh, I did too. Like I said, it just took me a minute to adjust to all the different animation styles mixing.
Yeah, and then you get Miguel and
Jessica Drew.
Thank you. I was like, what is her actual character name? And just because then you have their different animations, and then they're just spinning around, going around this big dome thing. But I loved
that's the Guggenheim.
Yeah, the Guggenheim. Thank you. I loved how Renaissance Vulture was portrayed. I loved its animation. I loved his power set. It was fun. It was exciting, and it was one of those things where it's like even those three, because Miguel's like in the mindset of the world of Spider-Verse, Miguel's like top tier Spider-Man, and even he was having a hard time because I love that moment where it was like, he was like, "Dude, you want backup? Do you want backup? No, I don't. Fine, color in," because even he was having a hard time taking on that Vulture. But I just. There's so much about that whole. It was like, because it's like what the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie was just Gwen's story.
Yeah, I didn't realize they hadn't gone to credits until like her story. They got to that point. Also, the credits roll. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and I was just like,
it wasn't quite RRR like 40 minutes in, but
R 15 minutes later, R another 15 minutes later, R. But yeah, but I loved the dynamic that Gwen had through the film. I love that because it's one of those things where it was like, we know Gwen's hiding something, but we didn't know exactly what. We knew she was keeping something from Miles, and eventually we figured that out. And then it was one of those things where it was like, when you get that needle drop when they're in the Spider-Verse, and like they're telling Miles, they're like, hey, like this is was it a canon moment? Is that was that the verbiage they used?
A canon event.
Yeah. Canon event. Then he's like, that means your dad dies too. And she's like, yeah, I know. I've accepted that. He was like, damn, okay. Like, but then that means when she goes back to her world and he's no longer, he quit. It's like, that means he doesn't have to die. anymore because he's
well,
not.
I think that's the point is at which she's like,
I think that's
Peter
her
is right.
That's her turn. Right there.
Peter is right. We can change things without destroying the universe.
Yeah. I mean, just tell his dad, hey, don't, quit. Don't be the captain. Wait till another captain dies. Then you can be captain again. But yeah, Gwen is MVP of this film. Like, Miles is fantastic and incredibly well done. But Gwen...
There's not a bad character in there. Gwen is my favorite.
No, there isn't. There's not a single bad character in this film. But yeah, Gwen elevating to basically co-lead with Miles was a great decision. I love that scene with them when they're hanging upside down, having that conversation. Mm-hmm. I love that moment where she's like, in every universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man, and Miles is like, hell yeah, and they all go back.
And in every one, it never works out.
Like, shit. But yeah, I loved the parents in this. With Jefferson, played by Brian Tyree Henry, and Rio, played by Luna, which Luna Lauren Velez. I love that they gave her more to do in this movie. I liked her a lot in this movie. She was great, and so many.
Well, both of her.
What's that?
Both of her.
Yes, both of her. I just love that there were so many moments where she got to have just these one-on-one scenes with Miles, and the heart was there. Voice acting was top-notch all the way through. I will say Brian Tyree Henry did kind of take a step back because it was more about him and his mom in this story. But I loved that scene with him talking to Spider-Man, aka Miles, at that point. Just like they're just hanging out and they're just having a conversation. I really liked that moment. The awkward moment with Gwen up in that little like perch thing where they're all talking. I loved everything about the parents in this movie. Not that I had anything negative to say about them in the first film. They just weren't the focus in the first film. But I love that they got more to do in this movie, and their characters got elevated as well. Peter B. Parker, he's obviously still, Peter B. Parker, but his character dynamics changed because now he's got Mayday, which I was worried about that because I was like, oh god, cutesy baby with spider powers. This is probably going to be Ant, but it worked. It worked.
And the moment at the end where she's like,
fuck yeah. And I love that, like, she even like came to him and was like pointing like, hey, look, like spider people outside. I'm like, hell yeah. But I mean, because I love Jake Johnson, especially as Peter B. Parker. It's great. He didn't get to do as much, obviously, but I feel like when he did come in, he did exactly what he was supposed to do, which was just be hilarious. But I also loved that dynamic that, like, he was kind of brought in to cool Miles down in the Spider-Verse, almost to the point where he was kind of the trap to, like, kind of keep him contained, keep him busy till we can get around him. And even though that's not necessarily it's what he was doing, but he wasn't trying to do it because he was just trying to talk to Miles. But it was one of those things where, like, they used him as a tool in order to try and capture Miles, which didn't work. But it also has that dynamic now that Miles can't trust Peter, which that's his mentor. That's his guy. And now he can't trust him. And at least at the point at the end of the movie, he can't trust Gwen either. Because at that point, Miles trusts no one, which sucks because he literally does feel like he is alone by the end of the film. Oscar Isaac as Miguel. The only nitpick, if I had one, is, and this is just me not knowing Spider-Man 2099's mythology, he's a vampire?
Somebody mentioned that to him.
Well, because there's that one point where he grabs Vulture and he's like got fangs. He looks like he's gonna like bite him. And then like you hear Gwen say that he's like a ninja vampire something.
That's the comment, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, are we gonna establish what the fuck that means?
And then there's a point when he was sitting there back in his world, he's like injecting himself with something. I'm like, I don't know.
Exactly. I was like, is it like
but again, that's like you. I don't know anything about this character.
Is it like a blade thing where he's injecting him so that way it takes his hunger away? Because Miguel's presence is very much like a vampire. He's this looming in the dark, and he's just sunken kind of face, and he looks like a villain, but he is a Spider-Man. And I wanted to kind of delve deeper into that story, but it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure most of the Spider-Man fans who read those comics they know it, but part of me was like, can we go back to that? Like, is he an actual vampire? Like, because I need to know what the fuck's going on here. But I really liked Oscar Isaac's performance. I wanted more of him. I think he definitely will be in a lot more going into Beyond. But I liked his kind of tortured character thing. He comes off as a villain, but it's one of those things where he's a villain in the sense that we're rooting for Miles, but Miles isn't necessarily doing the right thing. He's doing the selfish thing. So is Miguel really the bad guy here? Because he already has seen what happens when you fuck with the timeline.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad guy so much as just kind of like they have different opinions of how to.
He's the antagonist.
They're both doing good. They're both trying to do good things, but it's like their philosophies. I do have an answer for you.
Go ahead.
On Miguel. I think they're just calling him a vampire because he has those fangs. One of his spider powers is apparently he possesses elongated canine teeth that secrete a paralyzing though non-toxic venom. So that's one of his spider powers is the venom.
He has a spider bite.
Basically. So he has fangs, but he's not an actual vampire. That's just they called him because he has fangs.
Like Miles's electricity is called the spider bite or spider venom or whatever, but Miguel actually has an actual freaking bite to it. Okay, all right, that's cool. Like once again, would have liked to have had that drop of knowledge there, but yeah. What were your thoughts of Oscar Isaac? You liked his overall performance?
Oh yeah, I liked him. I think that Oscar Isaac was perfect casting for him. And we see this kind of thing in a lot of movies where it's somebody who's like not really not really the villain, but they are kind of a foil just because of the differences in philosophy. I mean, it goes all the way back to even like Professor X versus Magneto. They both think they're doing the right thing, but they go about it very differently, and one of them is more villainous. That in this case, he's not like a villain like Magneto. But it's like, again, he understands that he is trying to save the universe, all of the dimension, all the multiverse. But he understands that it involves sacrifice. And Gwen has come to terms with that. Although she turns on when she realizes you can change things, she's like, I understand these things have to happen. Whereas with Miles, he's just like, no, this is my dad. We can't let this happen. And he's just coming at it from a I don't want to say less educated, but he has not been exposed to everything
more emotional.
Yeah.
Obviously, because you're saying, your dad needs to die. You need to let it happen.
But no, I think it works out because it's one of those things where you understand both people's points of view. I don't think either one is necessarily wrong. There might be one that you agree with more than the other, but neither one is wrong.
What's funny is based off of Miguel's backstory that he tells, how he takes the place. He's basically doing what Wanda was trying to do in Doctor Strange. Except that he actually succeeded. Yeah. Is he because in Doctor Strange the other Wanda wasn't dead. She just wanted to take over that Wanda. She took over. I think she took over her body. But it's like
Miguel. Well, he sort of succeeded. He ended up destroying his entire dimension.
Well, no, but I'm saying he succeeded in terms of like he did get to live there and be that. But then eventually the world crumbled around. It's like. So he succeeded in what Wanda was trying to do, except he didn't do it. He didn't go full on fucking villain with it like Wanda did. Right. But adding that torturous soul to it, about how he did lose them all. Like he lost his daughter literally in his arms. Like she basically snapped away in a sense. They basically all snapped. But I really love that aspect. Speaking of, since we're talking into stuff about like all the worlds, let's talk about the actual Spider-Verse. I didn't care about this moment, but I still thought it was cool that we did jump into the Venom world there for a second with Spot, where you talked to the
convenience store lady.
I was like, there's only part of me I was like, please don't let Venom show up. Like, please don't have Tom Hardy. Because like when he goes, you act like there's not anything weird. I fully expected her to look over there and there would be Tom Hardy with Venom like looming over him talking. And I was like, don't do it. Don't do it.
I thought it was better with her just being there. Like,
I agree. I was like, don't pan over and show Tom Hardy's Venom. But when Donald Glover popped up as Prowler
Mm-hmm.
Oh my!
Because here's the thing: is as he's walking through the Spider-Verse, you're seeing 3,000 versions of Spider-Man, which I don't know if every single one of them has appeared in a comic book. They may very well have, but obviously many, many, many of them have appeared in different things. But the comic books, the TV cartoons, the TV series, things like that. I think they had some video game versions, things like that.
There was the video game versions.
Was Kraven a video game version?
What's that?
Was the Kraven a video game version that they showed right before Donald Glover?
The second Spider-Man game that comes out this year, Kraven is in that.
Okay, because he seemed like they kind of featured that one. I'm like, I feel like I should recognize that, but I haven't played really the game, so I don't know.
Now, Kraven is not in the first Spider-Man film, but he's in the one that comes out later this year.
They say a Prowler, but not your Prowler, and they showed Donald Glover, and it's one of those movies just like, yes, because A, it's Donald Glover, which is cool as shit. B, it's one of those things from Homecoming that, it was one of those things like, if you know kind of thing. So in this one,
and then 3, the obvious one is that Donald Glover was the original voice of Miles Morales in the cartoons and stuff. Like Donald Glover is Miles.
I didn't know that part.
Oh yeah, no, that was the whole thing about like in Homecoming was that Donald Glover is Miles Morales, but he's too old to play Miles Morales. He's
had to play his uncle, who becomes Prowler, obviously.
Exactly. That's why the Homecoming thing was such a huge is because you're too old to play Miles because you were Miles. So now we're gonna make you Uncle Aaron. And actually see that he actually does become Prowler in a way. Maybe go when they say because now they announced that they're going to do a live action Miles Morales. So great, that means we're going to get Donald Glover back in the MCU. But that they also made this now a part of the MCU. Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse is now an MCU canon film because we do.
This is why I hate multiverse.
But
because now you can say that. Everything now you can say the 1960s cartoon is part of the MCU. You can say that everything in the world is part of the MCU.
It's no different than with James Gunn's new thing. It's just going to be Elseworld, Earth, blah 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 blah. It's the same thing, but it's cool to know that at any moment they can interact and they can interject and do that. They're not going to. It's not like cartoons.
I love these things, little one-off and like winks and nods and references. That I love that. But I just think if they I don't want them to connect. I don't want them to.
You know what I kind of wish they would have done, because they did show Andrew Garfield and they did show Tobey Maguire, is when they were going through the villain thing. I kind of would have loved to have seen Paul Giamatti's Rhino, because they go, oh, here's a boring Rhino, and I was like, if they would have shown Paul Giamatti's Rhino, I would have.
I halfway wonder if they were hoping to have him there. And because they featured the boring Rhino, I kind of wonder if they were hoping to have Paul Giamatti, but he's like, I'm not doing this.
I would have loved if they just I am the Rhino. And
here's my thing: is like the Donald Glover one thing was cool, but then I think it's like, oh, cool, they have like a live action reference. But I think when they did that, and then they did Andrew Garfield, and then you showed Tobey Maguire, I'm like, okay, we get it. I think they
didn't show Tom. They mentioned Tom, but they didn't show Tom.
They didn't show Tom, and then there was like the Venom reference. Which again they didn't show Venom, but it was his world. I'm like, okay, having a live action thing show up with Donald Glover alone, I honestly think would have been cooler than dipping back into it 3 more times after that.
I was okay with that. I thought it was great, but I loved that they also brought in Spectacular Spider-Man, which to me was one of my favorite animated from MTV. I love that he just popped up and he was so much shorter than everybody else.
I never watched that one, but I could tell. I figured out what it was. I kind of guessed what it was because people freaked out when he came on. I'm like, oh, that must be that one.
Yeah, because he's the only Spider-Man that I know of that had the armpit webbing under his arms. But I loved just every aspect of that scene. I felt I was I'm almost like Ready Player One in the final battle. It was I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this at home when I can. Actually, I'm going to have to start pausing just so I can see all different ones. Also, can we get a fucking nod to a T-Rex Spider-Man? Where's the comic book for that? Give it to me now. Is there a comic book for a T-Rex Spider-Man? Because I want it.
I know there's a character called Devil Dinosaur in Marvel. I wonder if somehow they interacted at some point.
The only problem with that part is that Miles doesn't acknowledge that a fucking T-Rex was trying to attack him. If I was that was the only thing. I was like, Miles, you didn't acknowledge that? Come on. A T-Rex literally just jumped at you to try to eat you. Come on, bro. Acknowledge the awesomeness of that moment. But I also love
there is. He's called Peter Parker. Yeah.
Say that one more time.
There is there is this T-Rex. His name is it's PTER and then PTARKER because it's like instead of it being Peter, but it's like spelled like pterodon, like PTER. So it's Ter Tarker, basically. But yeah, apparently he's appeared in comic books, Edge of Spider-Verse, Spider-Man. Yeah,
that's the closest thing to these movies is that comic book set right there. I remember hearing about that. But and I love that like when they all chased him and stuff, they're chasing him. And I love that they did the one thing where like we saw it in the comic books where they hunt down Spider-Man, you like Sector 4, and then like the Doc Ock Spider-Man came out. Because I know in the comic books at one point, Doc Ock basically becomes Spider-Man and Peter Parker dies. And so I love that. Like, I'm not sure. I'm sure that wasn't the same Spider-Man, but I love that that was like a Doc Ock Spider-Man kind of deal. But yeah, I loved the whole chase sequence from that and how they basically jumped on a bullet train, which I know Brian was probably thinking a bullet train for that brief moment when they were all on it. But that even then Miles was still outsmarting Miguel, who supposedly, like in Miguel's mindset, he's the smartest one. He's the head Spider-Man. But even then, Miles outsmarts him and gets all of them away in order to be able to do what he does. What were your thoughts on was it Hobie? Is Hobie his name?
Hobie.
Hobie.
Yeah, Spider-Punk.
Yeah.
Hobie.
What were your thoughts on him?
Going into it, what I'd seen him like, he looked cool. I'm gonna love Spider-Punk. And I did like him, but I think he was in so little of it. I felt like they didn't use him a whole lot. Like when he first showed up, I'm like, okay, cool, now Spider-Punk's here, and then he just kind of stood around in the background going, I don't want to get involved until he like quit and left. And obviously it becomes pivotal because then he passes on his watch thing
to Gwen,
to Gwen, so she can go on. And so he's helping him out, and so I'm assuming he'll be a part of the.
Well, he was in the group at the end.
Yeah, he'll be part of the band in the next one. So I like that. I heard the voice. I'm like, I know this voice. I know I should know this voice. I could not place it, and then I saw the credits. I'm like, oh, okay.
There was honestly a brief moment there where I thought, like, did they get Idris Elba to play Spider-Punk? Because that would be awesome.
Well, here's what threw me is I'm like, I know this voice, and obviously they're going to cast a name in it, so I'm like, I should know who this person is. And I've heard Daniel Kaluuya speak in his actual British accent before, but rarely. Most movies you see with him, he's got his American accent going on.
Yeah.
But I'd heard it before, but I didn't place it, and so I'm watching it, and then in the credits I see the name Ziggy Marley come up, and I'm like, oh, did they get Ziggy? That's kind of a weird name from the past to get, because Bob Marley's son. He's done some music and stuff, but he's not like current or anything. It's okay, they got him. And then I looked like, wait, that wasn't him. I'm like, oh, Daniel Kaluuya, that's who it was.
Yeah, I did not pick up the voice at all. Like I was like, it sounds like Idris Elba, but I was like, it's not, and I didn't know. And I was like, oh, Daniel Kaluuya. I didn't know that's how we normally talked. Or if he was.
Yeah, but I loved his animation style. Was kind of that kind of obviously the 70s 80s kind of punk thing with like the poster bills plastered on like brick walls kind of look to it. And then of course when he takes off his mask, he's like, how do you look cooler without the mask? Even he's like, I don't know, it's cool.
No, yeah, it's like
I kind of loved his attitude. He was kind of a good foil to like Miles, who's all like enthusiastic, and he's just like, whatever.
Yeah, he's the rebel. He plays it off cool. Yeah. Aloof with everything. I do feel like I'm definitely gonna have to rewatch that with subtitles, because like there were so many times where he just is doing his accent where it's like, I don't quite know what he said.
So I love sometimes they threw up like translations because like they know people don't have a clue what he's talking about.
That's one thing I like throughout the movie too, is like they would say certain things and then they would bring up like a little comic book box going, this is
so fast.
Oh, it is fast. There was a lot.
Sometimes I wouldn't be able to like read it before it was gone.
And I didn't get the.
Well, like especially when they're walking through in the Spider-Verse, they actually have names, not on all of them, but on some of them, and I'm like, I can't read these. I'm gonna have to freeze frame the disc when it comes out.
Yeah, there's going to be so many times where I'm gonna have to rewatch this movie, and I'm going to have my finger on the pause button because there's so much that I wanted to see and wanted to spend.
And there will be there. I guarantee there's gonna be like frame by frame breakdowns on YouTube and stuff. So.
Oh, heavy spoilers!
Every Easter egg, and
they're probably already working on it right now.
Yeah.
We didn't bring him up yet, but I did really like the character.
What's his name?
Say his name. Spider-Man India is what people are calling him.
Pavitar Prabhakar.
Love the voice actor. Once I heard him, I was like, I know 100% who this person is. Even though I know you're not a fan of it, he's very much a Miss Marvel because isn't it like a bangle that he has that basically made him a spider in this? Because he didn't get bit. I think they said that he got a bangle, and like some Indian god gave him the abilities.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Okay.
I think that's what they said in his little like introduction thing. Mm-hmm. That guy was fun.
He was awesome. I kind of thought he was gonna be like, okay, whatever, it's gonna be, they want to have an Indian version of it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I liked him. I like he's like, this. I don't put anything in my hair, no road products in my hair. I just wake up and I don't exercise too much because I'm already too buff and those kind of stuff. And then even just the way he flew and like the poses he'd take when he was going through the air, it's like,
and it was almost, and his webbing was almost like a yo-yo because it went around the bangle.
He had some kind of yo-yo he was using, like as a weight when he was throwing stuff.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was the bangle.
Was that his bangle he was using? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it looked like it was like
a lot of times he was playing with it like a yo-yo,
I don't know. I thought it was just that. I thought you just played with it like a fidget spinner kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, I loved like the animation style of it. I loved that like he made sure, because his hair's so great that he had to have the hair be out of the mask and stuff. I loved everything about that. I was like, I wanted to spend more time. Like you want to spend more time with Spider-Punk. I wanted to spend more time with him.
Oh, I really with all these people. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I loved every character was so great to the point where it's like, was I bummed that Spider Noir wasn't there and Spider Ham? Well, it's not Spider Ham. I keep getting Simpsons caught in my brain. But
Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider Ham.
Yeah, okay, it is Spider Ham. Like, am I bummed that I didn't get them in the movie until like the very, very end? Yes, but there was so much going on that that I didn't necessarily like miss them. Like I wanted them there.
As much as I like the other ones, I like these new additions more than Noir and Porker and Penny.
Well, Noir was funny because he had weird dialogue and it was just a funny line. And Mulaney is I just fucking love John Mulaney. But yeah, every new Spider-Man that was attached and added into this were unique and different their own way, but also, like I said, elevated and worked with Gwen and worked with Miles to help elevate their stories so much more, so much better all the way through. Like I said, this to me worked so much, not worked so much better in terms of that the previous one didn't, but I think to me it's better than Into the Spider-Verse in every way. Like I think, except for maybe the villain, just because Spot didn't get as much time as Kingpin did, because Liev Schreiber's Kingpin was.
Well, we don't have the full Spot arc yet either.
Well, no, we don't. Like I said, because it is a two-parter. But like I said, I just remember watching this going, oh my God, is this actually better than Into the Spider-Verse? Because like I can't see any reason to argue that this is not as good, if not better, because it excelled in everything that Into did. And not that I said not did it better, but just exceeded it, because it was like.
It does what most good sequels do, and that's take everything that people loved and worked about the first one, and they just expand on it and make it even bigger in the second one, which sometimes can be to the detriment. Like I said, sometimes I felt like there are different animation styles. They kind of went right up to the edge with kind of getting to, and then with the chaos and with the additional because people loved all the different Spider-Man in the first one. So now I have 1,000 different Spider-Man, and it's like they push the edge. I don't know if they ever actually cross the line, but it's like, okay, we need to reel it in a little bit, but that's what good sequels do. They take what you loved about the first one and just make it bigger.
Yeah,
they expand the world.
Yeah, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Beyond. I'm so excited for it. Like it's been 3 days now since I've seen this, and I've just been like sitting there just like thinking about it. And I'm just so happy with everything I saw. There was not a single problem with it that I had. I've heard a lot of people say that the first 30 minutes is too slow. And I was just like, because you don't want character building? It's
no.
It's because like the first 30 minutes had a fucking amazing action sequence with Vulture and Miguel and Drew and Gwen. It's like
Gwen's story, yeah.
I was like, how was that slow? Like it's because you guys just really wanted to get to the Spider-Verse, like, because I'm sorry, like I care about these characters. Like, yes, all the Easter eggs and all this shit, that's fun, and it was so much fun. but I am so like just into the Miles character and Gwen and everything that I love that moment where we stop the film and just let them talk and just like catch up and like just express their feelings, because they're the only two that can really kind of talk about these things because they're going through it. And I love those moments. Everyone's like, oh, it's boring for kids. I don't give a shit about the kids.
I care about kids. I don't care about people who need nothing but action. Like, I'll be honest, my son, when he watches movies, he's one of those people. He gets bored. Like he just wants to get to the action. He wants to get to it. It's like, you don't appreciate movies. I failed as a father.
But I'm gonna defend your kid here for a brief moment. When we were that age, we were probably the same way. We had to grow up and appreciate movies for what they were, and because the Brian from 20 years ago had a different mindset than the Brian of today. The Sean from when I worked at the movie theater to today watches the movies a hell of a lot differently and pay attention to shit a hell of a lot differently than I did when I was movie theater Sean. So he probably just hasn't grown into it yet. I know you as a father are trying to get him there, but you know,
I've given up. He's rejected me in movies.
Your whole family has.
But yeah, like you, I am super excited to see where this goes from here. It's super anticipated. I had been already kind of piecing together my anticipated for next year. I mean, it's obviously very early, but just trying to get stuff together for it. And it's like, as much as, I mean, there's movies like Deadpool 3 coming out and Furiosa and Ballerina and all those other things that obviously I really am looking forward to. It's like, this is probably top of the list now.
It's like, as much as I'm excited to see Logan come back and Hugh Jackman come back as Wolverine, I haven't seen anything yet. And the writer's strike, I'm worried about it because I remember reading something saying that like Ryan Reynolds cannot deviate from the script while the writer's strike's going on.
But the thing about that is, though, he also got a mask on. So they can ADR in whatever the fuck.
Oh yeah, they can reshoot everything they want.
They don't need to reshoot it. Just ADR different lines in. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, as much as I'm excited for that, what this has done with these two films, I'm sorry. Like, I don't care what comes out next year. This is going to be my most anticipated film of 2024 because you've left me just.
And that's saying a lot with Sean, because you got Quiet Place Day One. You got Planet of the Apes movie. You got all kinds of stuff that Sean loves. And this is number one now.
But this has done so much in two films that I can't. Let's put it this way. I'm not that Brian lives next to me, but I'm saying this right now. If we go to the most anticipated of 2024 and this is not number one for me, Brian has every right to smack me the first time he sees me face to face. And I'm going to go, why? And you go, Spider-Man Beyond. I'm like, that's warranted. That's warranted. Because at this point, it's like, there's this and there's everything else. As much as I'm excited for everything else, this deserves to be the most anticipated film of 2024 based off of what across.
If you're going like what truly is anticipating, something like a new movie that we're looking forward to is not the same as a movie like this that's left you as such a cliffhanger.
This is such this is since Infinity War going into Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is. And then even before that, the Lord of the Rings films, where you knew you had a year. You had like, oh, well, you got to wait a year.
Yep.
We don't even have to wait as long as it doesn't get postponed. We don't even have to wait a year. And even if they want to wait till summer, they can push it back a month to April or May and do like the Guardians thing. I don't see us having to wait longer than a year.
Oh no, I think if anything, they might move to like the same weekend this year. So I don't think it'd be any later than like first week of June.
And that's the thing. It's like, because I remember you rated this higher in terms of the box office for our summer prediction.
I'm at this point thinking I was too low still.
I think I'm still right around the same because I think it's going to make a ton of money. But you got to remember, next week we got Flash and we got Transformers coming, and we're starting 2
weeks. Transformers next week, yeah.
But we're going to start getting hit with a lot of things, and people are going to be going to see the other things. This is going to have a great first weekend, I hope, and it's gonna have legs. But I don't think it's going to have the legs like Guardians had or Little Mermaid will have, because of Flash and Transformers and everything else that's coming out here in the month of June. Because June is a packed month. I want it to be huge. I want to be wrong with my box office prediction. I want it to be in the top 3. I just don't think it will. But you know what? This movie was made for $100 million. 100 mil. I know we talk about that like that's nothing, but for movies, 100 mil, it's going to make this easy.
It's going to make that this weekend.
Yes, and this movie, obviously, right now already, pencil it in for at least nominated for animated Oscar. And it not winning, what is going to come out this year that would beat it? Because Elemental is not going to do it.
Yeah, I think that if an animated film beats it this year, it's going to be one of those like little artsy ones that people vote for because it's like they're, you know.
I feel like if they did that, they're trying to make a point, and they're trying to do like the Lord of the Rings thing where it's like, oh, we'll give it to him for the finale, but we're not going to give it to him.
Well, the other thing is, I think that also sometimes the fact that it's a sequel, I think, can hurt its chances. Even though, I mean, obviously it's as good, if not better, than the first one in every way. It's like when you look at like the Star Wars or even Marvel movies, every year lose visual effects awards. Like Star Wars movies didn't win any visual effects awards from like the prequels or the sequels or the sequel trilogy, because it's like it just became, oh, it's just expected of them. We've seen them do that before, and it's like, I hope that doesn't fall into this like, oh, you know, it's just another one of the same as the first one. It's like, no, give this one the recognition.
No, this movie elevated its animation to even higher standards than the first film did, and the first film like broke this new kind of technology and stuff where people were like paying Sony to let them use this kind of animation technology. So, and they not only excelled at that, but they somehow elevated it. So for the Academy to not recognize that, which, I mean, it's going to get recognized, it's going to be nominated, but to not give it the win, because I'm sorry, based off of everything else that's come out this year, there's nothing that should beat this. This should be a hands down no-brainer when we come around Oscar time next year. If it isn't, then it's just the Academy just intentionally trying to like just be a shocker kind of thing, which they like to do sometimes, but don't do it to this movie. Anything else you'd like to add before we end this one?
Nope. Covered it all.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed the spoiler aspect of this discussion. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe on the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, I'm going to follow some of the social media outlets you see below. Let us know, what did you think of Across the Spider-Verse? Did you love it? Did you like it? Because you definitely didn't hate it. I want to know who the fuck, because it's a 95% on Rotten right now. Who are the 5% that didn't think this was a good movie? I want to know who these 5 people are.
Glancing at like Letterboxd, some of the people I saw reviews that rated it a 0.5 star, and their complaint was that, you know, was because of the cliffhanger ending. They're like, you know, I think one of them said you like jerked me off for like 2.5 hours and then didn't let me come. It's like, wait, so your complaint is that you loved the movie so much, you're mad it ended early, so you gave it a 0.5 star? Like, come on.
I hate people.
Now, I'm not saying that's the 5% of critics are doing, but I'm just saying.
Oh my God, people make me so annoyed. Anyway, if you guys love this movie, which you should have, if you're a true fan of Spider-Man, let us know what your thoughts.
Honestly, if you didn't, don't watch this channel anymore. Anyway.
If you didn't, then we're not the people for you.
Sorry, interrupted.
We really aren't. I mean, we only have like 300 followers right now. We're growing, but still, if you didn't like this movie, you're not gonna have the same mindset that Brian and I have. And we have some wild mindsets, but not liking this movie is definitely against the rules. But yeah, coming up next, we will have this week's episode of the Weekly Crusaders. Also, my review for The Boogeyman, and also about 2 weeks behind on it, but I swear to God, we're definitely going to be doing Cinemasochism. We did watch the movie. We just have to shoot the damn video. So we got plenty of videos. And like I said, next week is The Flash, and Transformers.
Next week's Transformers. Week after that is Flash.
Oh, so it's Transformers and then Flash. Anything else coming up besides Transformers, or just Transformers?
Look at the calendar right here. Next week is Transformers. That's the only major release coming out. Week after that is Elemental and Flash.
Okay, so yes, we got plenty of reviews. Plus, like I said, Weekly Crusaders and Cinemasochism. So we got plenty of coming up on the channel. So be on the lookout for all that. But we are the Movie Crusaders. My name is Sean Waskrug. That's Brian Michaels. Until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch the movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. over. Go home.